All right, good afternoon. Great to be with you today. I was on the campus of the University of Texas, San Antonio, years ago, and we had a kiosk up that asked the question, when do human rights begin? Or where do you draw the line on human rights? And we had pictures of the unborn at different stages of development, and you can see that kiosk right there on the board, I think. It'll be brought up here soon. And then we also had a free speech board that allowed people to write whatever they wanted, responding to the topic. So I started a conversation with a young man named Jack. And early in the conversation, Jack and I agreed that the unborn is a living human organism from fertilization. So we agreed they're human beings biologically. But then Jack said, but I draw the line on human rights at 18 weeks. So I said, well, Jack, why is that? Why do you draw the line at 18 weeks? And he said, well, the brain processing is sufficient at that point for the unborn to respond to sound, which happened to be the milestone that we had put on the sign. And so that was Jack's view. But he said there's another reason, because at about that point, the unborn is viable. So I asked, what do you mean by viable? That could mean different things to different people. So what Jack meant was, if the unborn can live outside the womb, even with technology, then that's what I mean by viability. So human rights starts at that point. And I said, but wouldn't that mean that as technology progresses, then human rights would change? The line would change depending on the progress of technology. Do you think human rights could change based on technology? And Jack said, oh yeah, that's right. And Jack changed his mind on viability at that point in our conversation, and that was the first of 3 changes of mind that he had in the course of about an hour. I'm just going to highlight the rest of the conversation for you as it happened. So I posed a challenge or a mystery for Jack at that point. I said, do you agree that you and I deserve to be treated equally? And he said, yes. And what about everybody standing around here? Do we all deserve equal treatment in terms of the basic right to life? And he agreed. And I said, if that's true, isn't it the case that there must be something exactly the same about us that demands that we treat each other equally? And what is the same? So Jack's answer was, well, it's brain processing. I said, do you mean the brain processing itself? Because it seems like we have different levels of brain processing, better or worse or more or less. I said, but you could adjust what you're saying to sort of fix it. It could ground equal rights if you said that you cross a sort of threshold of brain processing at all, or a certain level of brain processing. And if you cross that threshold, then you have that equally to everyone else. But that would also mean that, so that would mean that you and I have are equal. We deserve equal treatment. It would mean everybody standing around here deserves equal treatment. We're the same in that way. It would mean the unborn does not deserve equal treatment early on because they don't have that ability, or they haven't crossed that threshold. So that would make sense of your view. But it would also mean animals, many animals like dogs and cats, who have crossed that threshold would also be exactly equal to you and me. So Jack made a very predictable move at this point. He said, okay, it's not just brain processing at all, but also being viable and also being human. I said, okay, that would ground our equal rights. We all have that the same, all of us standing around here. That gets the animals out of there, out of the equal rights circle, and it would keep the unborn before 18 weeks out of the equal rights circle. But can you give me an independent reason to believe it's these 3 things in combination that grounds our equal rights, other than it just saves your view on abortion? And he saw the ad hoc nature of his reasoning at that point. But there's a deeper problem than just being ad hoc with his reasoning. There's a deeper problem. And I sought to show it by giving an alternative. And I said, what about human nature? What about human nature? instead of focusing on a functional ability, that is the basis for all of our functional abilities. We don't have more or less human nature. It doesn't come and go. Either you have it or you don't have it for your whole life. That seems like a more solid ground for equal rights. It's not based on how we function, but on the kind of thing we are. And Jack stopped, and he said, okay, you've convinced me. I agree abortion should only be legal when the mother's life is in danger. Wow. That's a big change all of a sudden. But I sensed that there was still some work to be done because I sensed that Jack also believed that abortion should be legal in the case of rape. And so we talked about bodily rights in the case of rape. And a few minutes later, he went over to the free speech board and he said, he wrote on the free speech board, life will force you into situations you don't necessarily want but have to deal with nonetheless. And so in just the span of an hour, Jack had gone from saying, the unborn's a human being, but it doesn't have equal rights to us until 18 weeks, which would mean most abortions should be legal, to saying abortion should not be legal except in the case of the life of a mother and not even in the case of rape. Big change. Now, I'm not implying to you that if you use these approaches that I'm talking about today, that somehow means that everybody's going to change their mind immediately. And many people don't tell us that their mind is changing. Many people change their minds in the privacy of their own home later. But what I am saying is these can be very powerful tools to help people start to think differently. Now, I did a lot of things in this conversation, but I was following a very simple plan. Here's the plan. Yes, the unborn are different, but look how they're the same. It's a really simple plan. Jack had pointed to functional abilities. I pointed to the nature that has to be there prior for any of those functional abilities in order to produce them. So you need to follow the same plan. So what's the plan? Yes, the unborn are different, but look how they're the same. Say that with me. Yes, the unborn are different, but look how they're the same. Now, you're not necessarily going to say that in the conversation exactly that way. This is a framework that you're going to follow. But before I talk more about that, we need to get something out of the way. What if someone says the unborn is human, but she's not a person until, well, I'm going to say, wait, what do you mean by person? I'm not sure what you mean by that term. We're going to ask the person to define it, and then I would suggest using the definition, not using the term person throughout your conversation, but if what we really mean is basic rights like the right to life, then just use that, basic rights like the right to life, throughout your conversation. And I might ask the person to give me examples of what a person is, right? Am I an example of a person? You? And then we can work from there as well. Greg Kokel at Stand to Reason, str.org, has pointed out that person is legal language that's been used throughout history to divide the human family into those who are in and those who are out, those who are empowered and those who are excluded, marginalized, and oppressed. Now, that history doesn't mean that everyone that uses the term is trying to oppress people, but it should give us pause. That's why I just try to define what the person is using the word to mean. Usually they mean basic rights like the right to life. So, someone might say the unborn are human, but they don't have basic rights until, and then they're just going to give me the laundry list of differences, right? They might talk about some of the differences that Stephen Schwartz identified in 1990. You might have heard the acronym SLED: size, level of development, environment, degree of dependency. Yes, the unborn early in their development are different in all of those ways. But there are even more differences. There are lots of differences. Growth rate, experiences, happiness, awareness of pain, mental calculation, minimal experience of anything at all, experience of self, rationality. There's even more. Consciousness, viability, ability to live outside the womb, self-awareness. People will throw out all these different things about the unborn, the ways the unborn is deficient, and the ways that they will say the unborn are different from us, or the unborn lack these characteristics. But why should I think these lack of functional abilities is significant? Why should I think these differences are significant? It's not even true that all these differences are a less than kind of thing. The unborn are faster at growing than we are. The unborn are better at existing surrounded by water than we are, right? So not all of these differences are even to the unborn's disadvantage. And many of those outside the womb also share these differences. Infants aren't self-aware. Adults have a disorder that keeps them, some adults have a disorder that keeps them from feeling pain. So we can affirm the difference between the unborn and us. We can ask why it matters. And then we can point to those outside the womb who are also different in that way. But there's a more fundamental problem with talking about all these differences, and that is focusing on the differences ignores the glaring, obvious, crazy similarities between the unborn and us. Yes, they are different, but look how they're the same. They have exactly the same human nature. They're the same kind of being we are. That's exactly what we're focused on when we say racism is wrong or sexism is wrong. We're saying, sure, blacks and whites are different, but look how they're the same. They have the same humanness. Sure, women and men are different, but look how they're the same. They have the same human nature. We look at toddlers, infants, the elderly, the disabled, and those who are short, those who are slow. We note how they function differently, but that doesn't cause us to say they're not one of us. Instead, we adjust what being us means, right? It says Bono, just like Bono of U2 says, there is no them. There is only us. Look how we are the same. We function differently, but we're the same kind of being, a human being. So the unborn differ in form and function, but they share the nature that grounds all of our functions. Let me give you a real simple way to think of this. It's actually not very simple, but let me try to simplify it. All of our abilities and capacities that we currently exercise, you could call these first-order capacities, are grounded in deeper capacities, what we might call second-order capacities, or the capacity to develop the capacity. So another way to put this is that the unborn have a certain kind of nature, the same nature that you and I have that's characterized by these second-order capacities. We have the exact same set of second-order capacities. Sure, we have current first-order capacities that the unborn don't, but before we can develop those capacities, we have to have the capacity to develop those capacities. It's those second-order capacities that get closer to describing what kind of being we are. So before you could exercise any of your first-order capacities, like, for example, you right now trying to understand the abstract categories I'm talking to you about, before you could have that first-order capacity, you'd have to develop the capacity for rational thought. But you had that capacity from the moment you began to exist. So that's a great comfort to any of you who are listening to me and haven't the foggiest notion of what I'm even talking about right now. Even though you can't currently track, you have the capacity to develop the capacity to track with me. Yay! And even if you never track with me, it doesn't matter because you have the same human nature that I have. You have equal value to me, regardless of whether you can even ever understand what I'm talking about. Sure, the unborn are different, but look at how they're the same. They have the same second-order capacities, the same nature as us. They have the same identity that maintains sameness through all the comings and goings of properties, through the changes that take place throughout our whole lives. They're the same type of substance that you and I are. We're the same kind of being, a human being. Now, we can start with common ground on things like women's rights being real and important, but they only make sense if they're based on human rights that are based on a shared human nature. But if that's true, then those women had those rights from the moment they began to exist as one-cell embryos, from the time of fertilization. So the unborn has those same rights. The unborn has the same right to her body that she will have as a teenager and later as an adult, and she has the same right not to be the victim of violence. I'm going to go ahead and just show our website here, jfaweb.org /free. If you'll go to that website, I'd love to share more stories like the one I shared with you today that can illustrate and give word for word how we go about having conversations and putting these ideas, sort of lofty, heady ideas, on the sort of the ground level for people. So if you'll go to that website and give us your email address, we'll send you free resources that can help you to have those conversations to imitate. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. How we doing? Good. So great to be here. What an honor. My name is Sarah Gable-Seifert, and I am the president and co-founder of Every Life. Who in the room has heard of Every Life? Yes, I love to see it. We're the first and only pro-life diaper company on the market today. Believe it or not, every major diaper company is supporting abortion, either vocally or financially. Can you believe that? I know, it's heartbreaking. If baby brands can't stand for their own customers, I don't know who will. That's why we felt so obligated to create the solution. We're now the fastest growing diaper company in America today. Thank you. We're only 18 months old, and we've had the opportunity of giving over 3 million diapers out and 2.5 million wipes to moms and dads who have embraced life for their baby, and that is what it is all about. So I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys about something that's actually near and dear to my heart, and it's an issue that I don't think is being addressed enough. It's declining birth rates. And we're gonna dive into what's going on and maybe some solutions that we can discuss to start to see this cultural shift that I believe we so desperately need to see. But I'm gonna start with a really crazy reality. Did you know that in the 1950s, the average woman had minimum 5 children? Minimum 5. And the average age for a mother having her first child was under the age of 25 years old. Is anyone over 25 in the room? Okay, how many are under 25? Okay, we got a lot of under 25. Okay, so in the 1950s, that was really normal to start having children at this age that you're in right now. But let's fast forward to today, and our fertility rate is actually lower than it's really ever been, and it's shocking. 1.6 babies per woman in the United States today. In order for us to have a healthy, lasting, sustaining future, we need our fertility rate to be at minimum at 2.1 babies per woman. Nearly half of the young people today, and I hope and pray you're not a part of this statistic, but 44% are saying that they are considering not having children at all. 44%, let that sink in. 23% are saying that because of their concerns of overpopulation and climate control and change, they do not want to bring a child into the world because they actually see it as harmful and selfish. 23% of the people in your generation and mine. So how did we get here, and why does this matter? Today, I want to explore the reasons behind declining birth rates, and more importantly, the urgent need to prioritize life and family in our society again today. So let's talk about problem number 1. A cultural issue is the core problem here. From a young age, women are taught to prioritize career over family. The message is really clear from the other side of the aisle. Family and children are obstacles from being able to explore all of your dreams and go after your desires, that they get in the way of all the things that you want to achieve for yourself. This mindset has created a cultural shift where the pursuit of personal ambition often comes at the expense of embracing the joy and the purpose of parenthood. And I'm going to be honest, this could have been my trajectory. I totally bought into this lie. I believed that my life was about me and my path and my career and climbing the corporate ladder. I was studying economics and going into real estate. And thank you, God, that he came into my heart at a younger age, and I gave him everything. He transformed my heart and my mind. I got married when I was 22, and now I am a mom, and I hope to have many more children. And being a mom, I'm telling you, there is absolutely nothing more fulfilling. The reality is, and somebody in the room needs to hear this, careers come and go. You can always be replaced. That's the reality. But you know, the one role that can never be replaced is being a mom and being a dad, being a husband, being a wife. It is the most fulfilling thing that you can do in this world. It's your legacy. It's why you're here. Problem number 2 is the pro-choice agenda. We all know this one. But despite the overturning of Roe v. Wade, abortion rates continue to rise. Well, why is this happening? Because we've totally normalized this idea that parenthood is an absolute burden, not a blessing. The cultural narrative often prioritizes what's best for you. Have you heard that before? Like, go take care of yourself, go have your self day, work on you. But at what cost? A society that values personal freedom over the sanctity of life loses sight of its fundamental responsibility, which is nurturing the next generation. Problem number 3, overpopulation, ideology, and climate activism. I'm going to quickly share with you about a UN survey. This is quite alarming. 49% of Americans, including many young people, believe that global population is too high. This is a complete lie. A large portion of the world is actually aging, not growing. Yet the narrative persists that having children is an environmental disaster, some would say. And again, this could not be farther from the truth. During our Make More Babies campaign that Every Life did this time last year, we blew up this sign in Times Square. Did anybody see that? We put a big sign up in New York City, and it was all based off of Elon Musk. How many of you know Elon Musk? Yes. He said, having children is saving the world. How many of you believe that that is true? Awesome, me too. And so we blew it up on a billboard with a simple but powerful statement underneath that said, make more babies. We need more children in this world. And we were on the ground, and we were just talking to different people walking by, doing kind of man-on-the-street interviews. And we got a lot of positive feedback, and some people loved it. But I will never forget talking to this one girl in her childbearing years, and it stuck to me. And it hits me still when I think about it. I was listening to her talk, and we were asking, what do you think of this message? Does it resonate with you? And you could see the spiritual tear in her heart, because you know what? God actually gives women a nurturing heart. It's just in us. We want to take care of others. We want to be a mom. That's normal. That's natural. That's good. And she was suppressing this thing that was inside of her. And she started off saying, you know what? I think children are great, and I love babies. But then she said, but you know what? I don't think I'll have my own. I don't think I'll have my own because they release too many carbon emissions. And no, I know you're laughing, but this is seriously with a straight face. They release too many carbon emissions. They can be a threat to the planet. And it's actually really selfish of me to bring someone into the world. This is your generation. This is our generation. And they're thinking this. So this overpopulation control ideology and this climate control activism actually is sinking into the hearts and minds of people today. And we have to make it stop. Problem number 4, turning away from Christ. Unfortunately, there is a growing number of people that are abandoning their faith. And as faith declines, as we know, so does our understanding of the sanctity, the precious beauty of every miraculous life. Without faith, we lose the moral framework that teaches us the value of life and family as the center of why we're here. A 2020 Pew Research survey actually said that 32% of U.S. teenagers today identified as religious nuns, meaning they don't take affiliation to any sort of religion. And in 2021, a Gallup poll revealed that more than 1/3 of young adults in the U.S. now have no religious affiliation. We need Jesus. We need him back. He's the answer, right? Okay, now here's the fun part. we're going to talk about the solutions. I'm way more of an optimist, so I don't like talking about all the problems. I like to talk about the solutions. So let's move into that. What's the solution? Make more babies. That is the solution. How many of you in this room want to be a mom or a dad one day? I want to see every hand raised. Thank you. That's awesome. This gives me hope. We know that children are actually the very thing that build a strong nation. Strong families build a strong nation. And we need more children in this world, not less. Children are our hope, they're our future, and they're our legacy. And we need a cultural shift that embraces life and views children as a blessing, not an inconvenience or a burden. Thank you. A 2014 Harvard University study said that when they did a survey on parenthood, this is actually really exciting. 80% of parents reported more meaningful lives after having children. Children bring joy, purpose, and fulfillment that goes beyond personal ambition. And I have to tell you, I've talked to so many women, and I've never heard, I used to work at a pregnancy resource center, and I've never heard a woman say that she regrets having a child. But I can tell you story after story after story of a woman saying that she regretted having her abortion. And that's why it's so, so important that we begin to prop up motherhood, prop up fatherhood, and begin to make it cool again, make it great again, because there's nothing better. Number 2, we need to promote the pro-life agenda, which all of you are doing just by being here today. Did you know that 60% of women who had abortions reported that they actually would have chosen life and carried their pregnancy to term if they had received more support and greater financial resources? That's a big percentage. That's why at Every Life, I said it at the beginning, we've already donated so many millions of diapers to pregnancy resource centers so we can help them feel supported and cared for with the practical things they need. Every mom, every dad, they need diapers, they need wipes. And I'm so thankful we get to do that at Every Life. I want to share a story, actually. I mentioned the Pregnancy Resource Center. I got to meet with hundreds of girls, many of which were actually coming in pretty set on having an abortion. And there's one in particular that was probably the most abortion-minded client I'd ever talked to. And I thought, God, there's no way. Like, there's no way I'm going to cut into this girl. She's stone cold. Her boyfriend is out of the picture, wants nothing to do with her, nothing to do with her baby. Her parents aren't in her life. Her dad passed at an early age. Just a really sad situation. And I decided I was just going to keep pressing in and ask her questions and just be there for her. And I started to see God work. And I started to see her heart soften. And when she saw her baby on the ultrasound machine, it really started to move her. By the end of the appointment, she said she wanted to come back. And so she came back. She got to see her baby again. And eventually, she ended up choosing life for her child, which was the best day, honestly, for me to see that mind shift that happened for her. But it gets even better, because then as I'm sitting with her, after she had made that wonderful, life-affirming decision, I said, I can't say her name, but I said, I want you to know that I'm always going to be here for you. But there's going to be moments where you might feel alone, and you might feel like the world is totally against you. And there is one person that will be there for you no matter where you are or what you're going through, and it's Jesus. And he made you, and he created you, and he loves you, he adores you, and his arms are wide open waiting for you to come home to him. He died so you can live and so that baby can live too. Do you want to know him? And she said yes. And she prayed this salvation prayer with conviction and with heart and with tears. And she stepped into a relationship with God that day. So 2 lives were saved. But it gets better. She brought her boyfriend into the center. And he started doing the mentoring classes and got a dad pouring into him. And guess what? He came to know Christ as well. I got invited to their wedding. So they got married. Right? And then the best part, I don't know if this is the best part, but it was something so special for me. I got to hold that little boy. And I have a picture of me and him on my desk, and it's why I get up every day is for that life and all the other lives that are worth fighting for. And it brings me to tears still thinking about it, because that guy, oh, my little boy, he almost wasn't here. He almost wasn't here, but because of love and support and all of these resources, he is here and he gets to live, and I can't wait to see what he's going to do. So we need people, we need a society standing firmly for life across all sectors. This is what we have to do to support families, because it truly matters. It can save lives. Number 3, the solution number 3 is we have to talk about the lies of overpopulation. Again, Elon Musk said it best. Having children is saving the world. Rather than viewing children as a threat to the planet, a cancer to the world, we should see them as vital contributors to a prosperous future. We must start challenging these dangerous myths of overpopulation and highlight the value of growing families for the health of our society and even our planet. And number 4, we need Jesus. I said this already, but we need Jesus. The best advice I've ever given someone is find God, get married, and make babies. Our country was founded on faith, and it's time we return to our roots. Faith is at the heart of who we are, and when God is at the center, everything falls into balance. When we embrace faith in our society again, I know, without a doubt, we will start to see life supported and protected at the moment of conception. So in closure, I want to end with one of my favorite Mother Teresa quotes. She said, "How can there be too many children? That is like saying there's too many flowers." Is that not amazing? It's so beautiful. It's time we reframe our thinking to see children as a gift and a reward from God. Let's build a society together where children and parenthood is celebrated, not feared, and where every miraculous life is supported and protected. Genesis 1:28 says it best. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number," or multiply. "Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." So how do we shift culture? We find God, we get married, and we make babies. Thank you guys so much for having me.
So all pregnancies end. 60 to 70% of them are estimated to end in a live birth. That's lower, actually, in non-Hispanic Black women. Another 20 to 25% are estimated to end in a natural loss. And the two I'm going to talk to you about today are miscarriage and ectopic pregnancies. And then finally, another 20 to 25% end in induced abortion. An intervention using abortion drugs or surgery with the intention of the pregnancy not resulting in a live birth. So my name is Dr. Susan Bain, aka Dr. Pink Glasses. I, like Stephen and Sarah, have been tasked with changing your mind, or perhaps providing confirmation why you don't need your mind changed. I've actually been able to listen to their talks and have loved listening to what they have had for their particular question. Now, the one assigned to me is this one. Is miscarriage care an abortion? So as we start our short time together, I want to first acknowledge that abortion is a hard topic, a really hard topic. I recognize that there are likely some here today who've been deeply touched by abortion, either directly or indirectly. My intention in my words is not to cause harm, though there may be some pain in this topic. Carrying the load of abortion can be heavy, and it's all too common in our country when approximately 1 in 4 women in America have had an abortion by the age 45. Now, on June 23rd, 2022, the Dobbs decision was issued. Roe was gone, but chaos ensued. Now, sadly, this chaos was actually rooted in my own profession of obstetrics and gynecology. As I reflect on what happened the past 2.5 years post-Dobbs, I want to say I'm sorry on behalf of my profession. If any of you are sitting here today and are confused about the question, is miscarriage care an abortion? You know, the purpose of medicine is health, healing, and wholeness. My profession is causing just the opposite. It's causing harm at so many levels. And I am here today to right that wrong. I'm here representing the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists, a medical organization that consists of more than 7,500 members with a mission to equip and encourage our members who want to practice life-affirming medicine to do so. Now, APLOG, we are the second medical voice to an organization called ACOG, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, my own profession's largest medical organization, who has become, sadly, an openly partisan wing of the abortion lobby at the expense of both of my patients, moms and babies. They just put out this ACOG committee statement on increasing the need to access abortion. They contradict themselves repeatedly in defense of pro-abortion policies, and they deny basic scientific truths through linguistic shifts or change in language. These are excerpts, actually, from their guide to language and abortion. Here's one of the things they state. We, as doctors, should not use the term heartbeat. It should be replaced with cardiac activity in all our documentation. They also state we shouldn't use the term baby or unborn child or preborn child. Rather, we should use scientific terms like embryo and fetus. Now, those are correct terms, but most of the patients I see don't have a medical background. So I use lay terms all the time. If I'm prescribing one of you all a medicine that needs to go under your tongue, I'm not saying you take it sublingually. I'm telling you, put it under your tongue. If you have a heart attack, I'm going to tell you, I think you've had a heart attack, not you've had a myocardial infarction, even though that might be the scientific term. And when women call us and say, I'm worried my baby isn't kicking as much, they don't call us and say, my fetus isn't kicking as much. The goal of ACOG is to dehumanize the developing embryo, the developing fetus, the developing baby. And no one in medicine should stand for it, and neither should any of you. Now, here's another statement they have. This is called Understanding ACOG's Policy on Abortion. They released it in September 2023. The purple bullet here says, people should be able to access abortion care where and when they need it, including for such purposes as abortion care, miscarriage management, and perinatal palliative care. Do not fall for their change in language. It is a woeful attempt to imply abortion is health care. I never use the phrase abortion and care next to each other because the direct and intentional killing of an innocent human being is not health care. Second, miscarriage management and perinatal palliative care. Perinatal palliative care happens when a woman is pregnant, her baby is diagnosed with a potentially life-limiting condition, and it's kind of like hospice during pregnancy and after pregnancy. Miscarriage care and perinatal palliative care are not abortions, yet ACOG wants to call them abortions post-Dobbs. Why? because ACOG is trying to broaden the definition of an abortion post-Dobbs so that exemptions in legislation that protect children before birth can include diagnoses that do not and should not ever be treated with abortions. So with that context, let's go back to my first slide and answer this very simple question. Is miscarriage care an abortion? The answer is simply no. It was not pre-Dobbs, the 50 years of Dobbs, or post-Dobbs. This intentional chaos you may be feeling is negligent, and that negligence is sadly leading to real harm. Real harm to women who have names like Amber Thurman and Portia Gumezi. Both women died. Their deaths were likely preventable. And unlike the journalists that reported about them, and ACOG's new campaign they just launched called Blame the Bans, that blame pro-life legislation for their deaths, there are no laws in any of our 50 states that prevented these women from receiving the health care they needed and should have had. Now, last Saturday, I went to the People's March. The Women's March is now the People's March. I went with Dr. Christina Francis, the CEO of APLOG. We went with the Daily Signal. And I had a great conversation with this woman. She actually had a miscarriage over 20 years ago. She had to have a D&C procedure. And she told me that women today post-Dobbs couldn't have the same procedure and would die. The video guys are going to show just a very short snippet of how our conversation went. I'm really sorry you had a miscarriage. Now, so your baby had died?
Yes,
Okay, and so the doctor had to do a D&C?
correct.
So did you know in Texas that actually could have, you could still have that procedure? So, short snippet, but let's set the record straight and take away any confusion you may have. So in medicine, the term abortion is actually an umbrella term. It's defined as a loss before 20 weeks gestation. So in my practice, if a woman calls and she is bleeding, cramping, I do an ultrasound and everything looks fine, she's actually got what's defined as a threatened miscarriage, or we document actually a threatened abortion. She calls back and says, my bleeding got worse. We do another ultrasound and her uterus is now empty. She's had a miscarriage. She's had a spontaneous abortion. Now, if she's in the middle of that process, it's called an incomplete abortion. She's not finished emptying her uterus, or an incomplete miscarriage. If she's already completed it, we call it a complete miscarriage or complete abortion. That is completely different than the last thing on this slide, an induced abortion, which is what Roe and Dobbs and the law is all about. So how does the Center for Disease Control define induced abortion? Just going to highlight a few pieces of this. A legal induced abortion is defined as an intervention performed by a licensed clinician that is intended to terminate a suspected or known ongoing inside the uterus pregnancy, and that does not result in a live birth. So the purpose of that intervention is to produce a dead baby. So the truth is this: miscarriage care is not an abortion. Pro-life legislation in all 50 states allow women with a miscarriage to receive the medical care they need. Now, what also is an abortion, an induced abortion, is a tubal or ectopic pregnancy. So look at the top graphic. Conception occurs in the fallopian tube. A woman has two of them, one on each side of the womb or uterus, and the embryo takes actually about a week to travel to the uterus and implant there. Now, sometimes that process fails and ectopic pregnancy occurs. It's often called a tubal pregnancy because the tube is the most common place it occurs. Now, the bottom picture shows laparoscopic surgery that I might do for an ectopic pregnancy. The blue arrow points to the uterus or the womb. The white structure is an ovary with the fallopian tube on top of it. The red arrow points to an ectopic pregnancy in that fallopian tube. So there's an embryo in there. The dark fluid you see is actually blood. This situation is particularly dangerous. It's the leading cause of death in the first trimester for pregnant women because that tube can actually rupture and fill that entire abdominal cavity with blood. Treatment is not by an induced abortion. Treatment is by medication or surgery. So, the truth is, ectopic pregnancy care is not an induced abortion, and pro-life legislation in all 50 states allow women with an ectopic pregnancy to receive health care. Now, I want to tell you about one other situation that's been in the news a lot lately. And this is when we have to separate our maternal and our fetal patient before we really want to because of a pregnancy complication. It is important for you to know that is also not an induced abortion. There have been many news stories that blame pro-life legislation on denying women care when they have pregnancy complications. One story involved Chrissy Teigen and her husband, John Legend. This is what the headlines read. Chrissy Teigen reveals late son Jack died in life-saving abortion. Let's just call it what it was. The bottom one says, Chrissy Teigen opened up about her devastating pregnancy loss, revealing she needed medical intervention to stay alive. Chrissy did indeed need a medical intervention to stay alive, and it was an induction of labor in which her son Jack was delivered early. It was not an induced abortion. The intention of our intervention in a case like that is not to end Jack's life. Rather, it's to stop her hemorrhaging, which is her situation, by separating her and her baby. If Jack's life could have been saved, it would have been. Sadly, the unintended consequence of inducing labor, separating them early when he was too young, meant he would not survive. However, if he had just been a little bit older, he may have been able to go to the neonatal intensive care unit, the NICU, and receive health care and hopefully survive. So the truth is, the premature separation of maternal and fetal patients is not an induced abortion. All 50 states allow this to happen. Probably the most important slide you'll see is this one. Intention matters. So remember that CDC definition of abortion? What was the purpose of the intervention? To not have a live birth, to produce a dead baby, okay? If we're doing interventions and our goal is not that, but our fetal patient dies unintentionally, that is not an induced abortion. So to summarize that comparison, miscarriage and abortion, they are not the same. A miscarriage is a natural loss. No intervention has occurred. An induced abortion, there is an intervention. A miscarriage, how do we manage it? Well, actually, we can do it in one of three ways. We can do it expectantly. If we do nothing in a woman who's in the middle of a miscarriage, about 80% of women in a 2-week span will actually empty her uterus naturally without us doing anything. If that doesn't happen, we do have medications and D&C surgeries we can do. Look at the other side with abortion. You do not see expectant management because guess what? If we do nothing, remember 60 to 70% chance we've got a live birth. So the only way that you can have an induced abortion is if something's done, abortion drugs or surgery, a D&C. And then finally, I just want you to know that there are emotional consequences that go with all reproductive loss. As I close, I want you to look at this picture. I want you to feel the emotions of this woman. They are real, they are raw, and they are devastating. She suffered a great loss. But what you can't tell by looking at that picture is what type of loss has she experienced? Has she had a miscarriage? Did she have an ectopic pregnancy? Did she have a premature separation where we had to move towards delivery early? Her baby was too young to survive? Or did she have an induced abortion? All reproductive loss comes with emotional consequences, including trauma for many. If her loss was indeed an abortion, she does not need our judgment or shame. She needs our love. You see, while she may say she doesn't regret her abortion because of the circumstance she was in at the time she made that decision, regret and trauma are very different. Think about someone who puts on a uniform to serve in our country. He or she likely doesn't regret that. But then think about what he or she sees or does as part of their job. We all know the term PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So you can have no regret and still have trauma, particularly when 63% of abortions in 2023 happened using abortion drugs, where women and girls were in their homes, their dorm rooms, their apartments, and their bathrooms became abortion clinics. And every time they go back in there, they're reminded of the trauma they experienced there. So, my challenge to you as the next pro-life generation is, while you fight for babies, please do not forget her. Love her. She has an entire lifetime to heal. Thank you all.